McConnell. Well, Somali pirates are threatening revenge against the U.S. after 3 of their comrades were killed yesterday in the successful rescue of American Captain Richard Phillips by the U.S. Navy. Now, the head of the U.S. Naval Forces Central Command is warning those deaths could spark more violence in the waters off the Indian Ocean. And ship owners are now looking at 1,000% increases on insurance premiums due to these hijackings. For more on the terror on the high seas, I'm joined by Ken Minkhouse. He's a Somalia and piracy epidemic expert and political science professor at Davidson College. And joining me live in studio here is James Christodoulou. He's an industrial shipping enterprises CEO. He negotiated the release of one of his ships from these very pirates just recently. We're going to walk through both of the details this morning. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Ken, let me start with you. We understand that the hostage situation, thankfully, has come to a resolution with Richard Phillips. How exactly was it resolved, and how uncommon was that by the United States to take a pretty aggressive stance on this?
The entire situation was unique. We had never had a piracy situation in which a ship was intentionally stalled. We had a hostage stuck on a lifeboat with some of the pirates out at sea. This was not the way that piracy normally goes down in Somalia. Normally, the entire cargo ship is taken back to shore with the crew intact. The pirates negotiate the ransom. They're just in it for the money. The ship is released. This situation that ultimately involved Navy SEALs shooting the pirates when they appeared to be threatening the captain's life was very, very unusual and really changes the whole game of piracy off the Somali coast.
Ken, specifically, how does it change the game? Because as we understand, a similar situation happened with the French, where unfortunately the owner of that boat actually died as a result of it. But we understand there are more naval ships in the area. But as I understand, I can't remember, there's a 25,000 or 2,500. I mean, walk me through. I mean, basically everybody tells me you can't control that area of the seas.
No, the area in question is as large as the entire eastern half of the United States. It's a huge amount of water. There is no way that international navies can successfully patrol this to prevent the piracy. They have deterred some of the piracy along the Gulf of Aden, which is a more narrow corridor leading into the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. But it's a task that's too big. So the piracy is going to continue. The question now is, how will the pirates adapt to the new rules of the game in which some militaries, the U.S. and the French, have opted to use force to stop and kill the pirates. And make no doubt, they will adapt to this, and they'll probably adapt in ways that will make hostages more at risk. And that's one reason why I suspect insurance rates are likely to go up quite a bit for the shipping companies.
James, you can speak firsthand about this. Walk us through personally what happened to your ship and the people who work for you.
Well, very much like the Alabama. Our ship was attacked by Somali pirates. Unfortunately, in our case, in spite of all the efforts that we took before that voyage to prevent being taken hostage, we were captured by pirates, and 28 of my crew members were held captive for about 55 days. So that started a long process of negotiation with the pirates to secure their release.
And walk me through that negotiation, what kind of communication you were having with the State Department here in the United States. What was happening?
Well, our negotiation was really just between the company and the pirates. There was no government, military, or other organization involvement.
Did you reach out to them, though?
We certainly contacted them, but you have to remember that what's unique about the Alabama is that it was an American crew and an American flag vessel. So, of course, the American government and the U.S. military were very much involved. For us, it was a Liberian flag vessel, Indian and Bangladeshi crew. So it seemed at that time that the U.S. really just kind of didn't have a dog in that fight and didn't offer the same type of resources and involvement that they did in this case.
You used a separate cell phone. You didn't identify that you were the CEO of the company. You used an alias. Walk me through why you did some of these things and what it was like negotiating with these pirates?
Well, first of all, what we wanted to do was to depersonalize and de-escalate the situation, because what we were dealing with were the lives of 28 of my crew. And so for us, it was very important to keep it polite, professional, and purely commercial. The negotiations themselves are tedious, and you never get away from the fact that you know that everything you say and everything that you do could have real life or death consequences for people half a world away. It's very deliberate communications, it's very slow, and...
How savvy are they?
You know what, they're smart enough to have done this a bunch of times in 2008, and it doesn't take that much, I guess.
Is it true that the funds that they were asking for were not the type of funds that you could come up with, and you went to some of your colleagues in the shipping industry and they collectively helped out?
Well, there is a brotherhood of the sea, and even though we compete with each other commercially for ships and for cargoes, we do all band together, and this was one of those instances where I had to bang on a lot of doors. We're a smaller company. That type of money to pay the ransom was difficult for us to generate internally, and the good people at Clipper and my friend Per Gullestrup over in Copenhagen were there to help us out and secure the release of my crew.
You know, Ken, I imagine a story like James's is becoming much more common, and I guess the question everybody's asking themselves is it worth force as opposed to giving out what has amounted to, I think, somewhere between $20 and $40 million last year on the seas? I mean, is it a fraction versus what could be the loss of lives?
Well, that's part of the calculation is this essentially just a nuisance tax, the cost of doing business for shipping companies in the region? $20 to $40 million sounds like a lot, but compared to the overall expenses of international shipping, it's really not that much. On the other hand, there is the longer-term argument that if you pay the ransoms, you are encouraging behavior which could proliferate not just along the Somali coast, but in other areas, and it could start to become political. The Somali pirates are strictly in it for the business. They're trying to be well-adapted parasites, not to kill their hosts, not to create the kind of incidents that they did this week. But we could see other groups see this as an opportunity for more political or even terrorist ends, and that's really the debate
dangerous
here.
Yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, we're actually looking at a live picture right now of the Maersk, Alabama, as we speak, and thankfully Phillips is safe. But, you know, James, first of all, were all your crew members safe, nobody harmed?
I want to say my crew members all returned home safely, and for me, safely was not just physically intact, but mentally, emotionally intact, and they all returned to their family, and all of them have now been redeployed on other ships, my ship and other ships.
So how do you adjust for business moving forward? I mean, are you going to have more armored guards on board? Does it raise your insurance costs? What are you doing now to handle this situation?
Well, clearly it's going to raise the insurance costs for the region just because the threat level has gone up. And as your other guest pointed out, I think we want to be careful that we don't escalate the violence in the situation, because the real cost here, even though there's a dollars and cents cost, the real cost is the human element, and the hundreds and hundreds of brave seafarers that are being kidnapped and traumatized by this event. And what we don't want to see is escalation and proliferation. As far as armored guards, shall we say, on board the ships, the jury is kind of out, but I can tell you that myself and a lot of the ship owners that I've been speaking with about this very instance are not in favor of arming and weaponizing ships. We want security in the region, but we don't want to turn our ships into shooting galleries. There are 2,000 ships that go through that region of the Gulf of Aden every month. There are 20,000 ships worldwide the size of the Alabama or larger, about 50,000 ships that sail the seas, and over 1.3 million seafarers worldwide. So do you really want to start to train, arm,
weaponize all those?
And who certifies? Thousands of ports worldwide. Do you want armed ships pulling into every port in the world? What we want is security. I think it's best left up to professionals and not individual crew on board the ships.
It's a great point and a very difficult one indeed. James, I hope you'll join us again and bring us up to date on some of the activities over there. And Ken, thank you very, very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate what you guys brought to the table this morning. Thanks so much.